Hello, everyone, and welcome to February 2024 Integration Down Under. Tonight, let's go through the slides. So we've got the organizers, Martin, Dan, Mick, Wagner, and myself. And tonight's talk is by Wagner, a lap around the new AI capabilities in Logic Apps Standard. So that will be a very interesting and very informative one for the AI side of things. I think every talk I've seen lately has got the word AI in it. So it's becoming more and more prevalent. So let me get rid of my slides and add Wagner's slides in there. And welcome, Wagner.
Thanks, Bill. Am I unmute? I am. Thanks, Bill. It's been a long time. I think as last time as I was looking was something in 2022. Don't think I presented last year. So it's good to be back. And let's go straight through to the presentation. So for the ones that doesn't know me, my name is Wagner Silveira. I'm a senior product manager from Logic Apps. Before that, I was an MVP for 5 years. And I've been focusing on Microsoft, mainly on developer experience. But as Bill said, this area of AI capabilities is super important. So that decided to bring that one as something that a little bit different from what I do today. Let's take a quick look at our agenda. So I'm going to be talking about basically two features that we just got in public preview that is going to get you into the area of AI and how the AI can help you. The first one is the workflow assistant, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about what it is in a minute. And the other one is like how to use Logic Apps and reg patterns to create your intelligence applications, focusing on a couple of new connectors that we have for OpenAI. Then on each one of those, we're talking a little bit about the improvements that we're going to be doing later on. And then we can move to a question and answer. So the first one that we have today is workflow assistant. So what is that workflow assistant? It's the idea of having an assistant inside your Logic Apps workflows that is only available today on Logic Apps standard. And with that, you should be able to ask questions, to ask them to help you to set up, or at least to help you to guide where and how to do some things, right? And also help with discoverability of some of the components that you have of Logic Apps. It brings curated information from multiple sources like our Microsoft Learn, our tech community blogs, and put all of that in a single knowledge base using OpenAI and ChatGPT to provide that natural language kind of experience. So quite simple in terms of a feature, what it is, and the best way to actually talk about that is demonstrate, show how it would be working. So let me bring so let me go to one of my workflows and then bring it to the screen. Okay, so you should be seeing my my Azure screen here, and this is a Logic Apps standard, right? It has a group of workflows. Come on, internet. So let's take a look into one of those services, like the work order management, work order created. So on that one, I just go to the designer, and that's where you're going to be finding the workflow assistant. So as you can see, we have a logic app here with a series of steps. And let's assume that I'm not like too familiar with logic apps. I would like to understand a little bit better what that logic apps does. So one of the things that I can do is I can go to the assistant, right? And then I can ask the assistant, for example, to describe this workflow for me, please. I just go. You can see that it's going to be inside of the context of that workflow, and then give you the information of what it does. Right. So here is a high-level description. The workflow is triggered by a message on that particular queue, so you can identify the queue of where it is. The message is received from queue and split into individual messages. So it shows that behind the scenes that it gets that split on. Each individual message is then passed on a JSON using pass JSON action. The pass JSON is used to create a new row in a table called CPL work orders in the common data service. Then Azure API management is called to the power restore operation, passing a ticket number and a site ID value from pass JSON. The response from that API is updated in another row called customer tickets. The values mean time to restore and workflow status is updated, etc., etc. So you can see that it actually goes and looks into the logic app and give you a lot of information, including some of the values that are being used between actions. The other thing that I could do here, for example, is I can look into that and ask things like why does logic app have a scope? So it explains what the scope is, right? It's used to get the groups together. It allows you to define a logical boundary, etc. So it helps you to discover some of the things. But it's not just like this. It's not just about the description and not just about learning about the components. I can ask also, how do I create a tracking ID on this workflow? And again, it's going to be looking at the workflow. It explains what is going to be doing, right? Using an expression on the custom tracker property of the most of the triggers, etc. I could ask and go a little bit more. I could say maybe create an expression let's do a look into a couple of items that this one has, right? It has a ticket number and site ID from pass JSON. And with that, it should give me some information on how to create that. So concat body pass JSON int23 site ID and body pass JSON int32 ticket number. So as you can see, it can go and do a lot of the things here. So I could go and select that and apply in the places where I need. So it's going to give you the ability to help with some of the tasks that you might not understand how to do. and or from there try to expand and try to refine this. And Bill, any questions from the audience so far with what we showed?
No, there's nothing so far.
Okay. Any questions from you and Dan?
Not yet.
I assume not. So the other thing you can do is if I come from here, instead of using existing logic apps, let's try to go and create a new logic app. So I create a stateful logic app, and this is going to be sample AI, sample workflow assistant. So just going to create in like a very empty logic app at this stage. And see what kind of things we can do with like an empty logic app. So if I go to assistant, say, can you help me to create a logic app that takes data from a queue in service bus and sends to an SFTP server? See what it comes out with. It give you each one of these steps, right? And then you can go and then try to follow that. One of the things that we're planning is actually give you more detailed steps, and also trying to get this to actually generate some sample code for you. We're going to see later on the roadmap. We can also ask questions like what are the messaging connectors available, or even if you're looking for a specific connector, asking if it has that, and it gives like a set of connectors, right? You can refine that. For example, another way that to ask this is, here is one good prompt. Can you provide examples of ERP integration scenarios? And then I give you some examples. So those are the two things that you can do with the, some of the things that you can do with Workflow Assistant today. The question here is, what happens if I started to ask questions that are not related to logic apps? Like, what happens if I ask, how do I restart? So when it goes from here, it's going to move you to, because it's outside of the scope of logic apps, it moves you to Azure Copilot. So if you wanted to continue, it moves you from here to Azure Copilot. And just to show that with that we really just restriction those questions for logic apps is, can you tell me what is the best party to vote on the next election? I'm sorry, but an AI assistant specifically designed for that. So you make sure that you don't get those hallucinations or things that is really outside of the scope of your logic app, right? Because the reason I show those two is because there is a lot of times that people is asking about that, like how far is the assistant goes. It's really get out of the boundaries that what we have here.
Here's a good one for you.
Yep.
I spent part of the day chasing this one. The SFTP connector, is the folder path a backslash or a forward slash?
How to configure the folder path on SFTP. Let's see what it says.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you.
Mm-hmm. Should I use a
Backslash or forward
slash or backslash when configuring the path for the SFTP connector? If if our documentation knows, it will know. If not, there we go. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it is. Hold on. Let me just.
I hope it is.
Yeah, I hope it is.
Yep, because the sad thing is that the list files takes the backslash, but the create files takes the forward slash.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting one. So this is what we have for the workflow assistant, right? You see that it's currently in public preview, and we're trying to bring more information about that. Let's go back to the presentation and talk a little bit what we're planning next with that. And also, if you wanted to know a little bit more, you can go to that URL. Sorry, this is the wrong one. I actually have this for the roadmap. I come back with you guys for the workflow assistant in a minute. Let's continue with the rec patterns. Seems like I have my slides mixed up. So let's switch gears here, and instead of consuming AI as based on a workflow assistant like what we have there, how can we start using logic apps to create some intelligent applications, right? And let's start with a use case. So the use case that we have here is Contoso wants to give employees an experience to ask questions about their insurance benefits based on the documentation that that our company has, right? This is an example that a lot of people is using to present, right? Like a lot of the applications are using this. And then we're going to be showing like how it can be working from a pattern point of view, how this can be used from today if you coding that with Python or something like that. And then what we can do if we're using logic apps. But before you continue, just give me 1 second, because dear old cat is meowing just outside my door.
Yeah, I don't have that trouble at this time of the evening. My dogs are both sound asleep on the couch.
Okay, cat's inside. Sorry about that. So let's go and see what is the idea behind behind this. So when you're working with that, we have two steps when you're creating those intelligent applications. One is creating some kind of ingestion pipeline, right? And when you're doing that ingestion pipeline, you need to have the ability to load a set of documents, and those documents are going to be broken down, basically creating tokenized, creating the different tokens, and creating embeddeds inside a vector database. When those embeddings are created, then you can insert that, and this is what the application is going to be searching against in a later stage, right? So after you create that process and how you break all of that, then this is how you create your model for the applications to be the searching against. When you're creating an application, you have usually a front end, right? A natural language front end where you're going to be chatting, like we see on the workflow assistant. That chat front end passes the questions that you have to the backend. That backend is going to be extracting that relevant, is going to get that information, is going to break that again, and then search the vector database for the relevant embeddings based on that. And then when it gets those values back, it passes the original information and what they found to a ChatGPT service to generate a relevant response. So to make that response human readable again. And that's what's coming back, right? So why this is kind of a good fit for logic apps? When you're thinking about that ingestion pipeline, it requires connectivities to things like Azure OpenAI, Azure AI Search, and depending on where your files are, for many of other services, right? So you might be reading your company SharePoint to go through that process. You can be reading some other systems. You might be needing to augment the data before you're pushing it there. Then there is a fair amount of code, right? Requires to creating that tokenization, to get those embeddings, to index those documents, to search, to do the vector searching, to get that searching query, and then returning the values. Okay. So without logic apps, you would be having to deal with a whole lot of different scripts, right? So this is directly from the sample that you have on GitHub that does that same thing, but then you can see like the amount of scripting that you have to manage and you have to play with. If you think about what we can do with logic apps, like one of the core things that you do with logic apps is having that connectivity a lot more simplified by creating the building blocks that the connectors gives to you, right? For example, connectors to Azure OpenAI or connections to AI search. And you can need it just to focus on the business logic and also how you might need to augment your data from your own environment. Because resiliency, connectivity, and all those kind of stuff comes as part of the fabric, so you don't have to worry about that. For us to get into that area and provide that simplicity for you to create those components, that's where we came up with two new connectors. So we have an Azure OpenAI connector and an Azure AI Search connector, right? So the connectors are ideal to build those RAG applications. So it is available today in Logic Apps standard only, and allow you to do document ingestion, to automate async processes, and to also chat for your data. Then later on, those connectors and if you have Logic Apps created using those connectors, can be presented as plugins for other platforms, right? With that, let's take a look at a demo for this. So how we created that same application that you see, like a lot of those components using using Logic Apps. So if I go back to my portal, let me just clean up one thing here. Let me delete that sample workflow assistant because I don't want that one to stay there. Yes, I want to delete. And now that it's doing that, let's go to a different application. So We go to that the test AI logic app. And in here, we have exactly those two workflows that we discussed, right? So the first workflow that I'll show you is the data ingestion. And this one is based on an HTTP, but it could be any trigger that you want, right? And the first thing it's going to do on that is get the document that we pass in as a parameter. Then is going to create a file, a definition for that tokenization, right? And then is calling a function today to tokenize that. After that, it gets what is being returned into a JSON format. It selects groups of those items, right? So it's just like remapping that. Then this is when we use the first of the new items, right? So it gets multiple embeddings, passing the output of that array and pointing that to to a deployment to a OpenAI environment.
Wagner,
Yep.
can I just ask a very quick question?
Yes.
That function that you were talking about earlier, is that to convert the PDF to text? Is that what that's doing? Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
So you're talking about that one here, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Cool.
Exactly.
Thanks.
Then you get the embeddings. You recreate the array with the output of that, right? So just doing the maps. And after that, you index documents and you send that to the Azure AI, Search AI database, right? So with that, although today we still needed that function to break it down into the convert PDF to the string, right? But we have a lot less code. We don't need a code to deal with the embeddings. We don't need a code to deal with indexing. We didn't necessarily need to know how to connect that because it's abstracting a lot of that for you. Let's see that in action a little bit. And if it goes back, my machine is really slow today. Go back to overview. So I'll run that with payload. And here is the payload that we're talking. Just before we go, we can show that document that we're talking about. Do I have it open here already? I think I have it open here. So the document that we open on that thing is this one here. So it's a Northwind Health Plus, right? That has a comprehensive plan. It has some plans. It covers routine physical, well child visits, immunizations. It's mammograms and colonoscopies. It has cover for substance abuse. So we can use some of those things to ask questions later on, right? So let's go and then run this. Status 202. And I finish on today, 6 seconds. So it loaded the file. If you wanted to take a look at some of the things that happen inside. Like, as I said, it got the file, right, from that PDF. Then after that, it call the function and get all the content. Then it normalize that into a JSON. It select creating an array, doing creating the body. Then get embeddings for that. So broke it down, the data. And after that, remap and insert it. Okay. I'll stop showing that one because my machine is really slow in here. So once that data is stored, right, so then we can go and start asking some questions. So of course, in here, I'm doing directly from Logic Apps, but this is it. This is an endpoint. As you can see, let's take a look at the actually, what is that chat workflow looks like. So again, when an HTTP request is received, right, it creates a group of messages to feed the ChatGPT. And then now it generates a search query based on the data that we pass on. Right, and you can see that is going to be using here a bit of JavaScript for now. Then it gets the search query, calls the OpenAI, get the embeddings, do the vector search, creates a prompt combining the values before, right? The search results and the original message. Then do the chat completions. That is like creating that in a natural language, and return back the outputs of this, right? So again, although we have a couple of JavaScripts, we have a lot less things to manage here in terms of connectivity and in terms of how to pass the data to those services. If you go back to overview and try to run this, I will start with the script message that I have, and then after that we can go crazy and ask other questions. So let's run with payload. the first one is like, does my plan cover ISAMs? I have the impression that no. But actually it does, right? So your plan cover ISAMs according to Insurance Doc 1, both the Northwind Health Plus and Northwind Standard plan use coverage for that. So that's good. We can ask if does my plan cover child well-being visits? As well as immunizations and other preventive care in Doc 1. Right? So it gives you the information based on the things that we actually found on the document as well. Let's take a look at one of those and see what it's doing with all of that data. Okay, so I received the plan, right? As I said on that one, those are like creating a set of seed data that is going to be used later. Then the first one is like generate the search query. And it gets the data and say, with the role of system, the message is blah, what are my health plans, show available health plans, and the message that I create, right? Generate search query for does my plan cover ISAMs? Get a single embedding. With input health plan ISAM coverage. And then it finds the places where we find that. Does the vector search. I find the document and the places where it is. All of that is like really information on the database, right? Create the final prompt. And see that now it combines all the data that we got before. And the output of that is exactly what we found. So back to the presentation. Just reviewing a little bit of what we showing, like what we're doing there is like you're breaking down the PDF according to the prompt. Then you tokenize, right? You generate those embeddings and send it to the OpenAI endpoint to convert embeddings to vectors. Then store the information on the vector database, which is on the Azure AI search. So this is like the pattern that we implemented on that first workflow. On the intelligent application, so the app sends its original prompt. It generates the embeddings, right? Goes to the OpenAI to convert the embeddings to vectors. Go to the vector database, like the Azure AI search. Get the segments and the prompts, and then ask it to get like the compile, pass the compile request for it to give a response in human form, and that's what you return to the client. So what we have in the roadmap here for intelligent apps, right? The first one is one is that tokenize operation that today is a function. We're going to provide a way for you to tokenize different types of documents. So you pass the documents and the document type, and it's going to be doing the tokenization for you. The other thing that we're trying that we're going to be doing is that kind of in one action you'll be able to tokenize, embed, and index, right? Instead of having to go on each one of those. If you're going to repeat that every time, then you should be able to provide one action that does that integrated vectorization. This is like from the side of the rec pattern. But also you have logic apps playing on that area and being able to easily create those patterns as well, then the things that you wanted to do is getting logic apps as a plugin for semantic kernel SDK. So from the semantic kernel, you should be able to call a logic app just like you would be calling some other services, right? Or also creating logic apps as a plugin for Copilot Studio. But that we needed additional feedback from customers, like what is the best way to do that. But those are the things that we're planning on our roadmap. I'm going to pause here for a minute to see if there is any other questions coming. I think I got the wrong thing.
I haven't seen any questions.
Okay. Then
actually, Martin had raised a question, but it's in the private chat. Bill,
open the mic, Mike. Hello. So I had a question earlier on, and that was around the assistant inside Logic Apps. Is that powered by GitHub Copilot Chat, or is it powered by you've just ragged the Learn pages?
Sorry, can you repeat that one?
Yeah. So when you're in the assistant, and you were asking it questions about how to do service bus queues and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. Under the hood, is that powered by GitHub Copilot Chat, or is that powered by you've done a bunch?
No, it's a model similar to GitHub's and Azure Copilot, but specific for Logic Apps that was created based on docs and tech communities.
Yeah.
So see, it's a reg pattern. It's a reg application just like the one that we showed, but instead of looking at the PDF documents, we pointed it to our docs and our tech community website.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So you don't need a GitHub Copilot license to use it.
No, that one is as long as you have a Logic Apps standard running, it's only running today on the portal, right? We wanted to integrate that to Azure Copilot, but because of timing, we end up creating that just inside the designer for now. And you see that is we do the handoff to Copilot when things get outside of the realm of the Logic Apps. But then we're planning to bring it to Visual Studio Code as well. And when we bring it to Visual Studio Code, probably would be similar way connected to GitHub Copilot, or handing off when it's outside of that scope. Cool. Good to see you both. It's been a while. Nick and Martin.
Yeah, you too, Wagner. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
So I'll be at the summit.
Well, this is the first time. This is the first time we've had all the organizers on a call on a webcast for.
That's feeling important now.
A year and a half, probably.
That's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still trying that to answer that other question. I'm going to ask the workflow assistant, Mike. What's happened with the MVP summit?
Yes. So it looks good. What you went through looks good, or looks great. So with OpenAI search, you've got the ability to index documents and things like that, so you can point them off to repositories and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of things. What you're doing is bringing in another PDF and sort of augmenting it to the collection.
Exactly. You see one of the items there. It's like when you bring in the document, you actually giving it an ID, so you can come back to that. You can update if it's like a new version of that same one, so you don't keep like old information. And if there is nothing stopping you, for example, to actually pointing that to a SharePoint library, throw the whole SharePoint library, and each one of those go through this process, or a storage with a number of PDFs and things like that. And as long as you have that ID to keep track, that correlation ID to keep track, this document is this, and then updated this thing, it keeps up to date.
So Wagner, I've got a couple of questions for you. So when I do this talking to either APIs, whether it's Azure, OpenAI, or just straight APIs with OpenAI, I know it's a bit confusing, but go with me.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I do sort of any work like this, the system always imposes on me to manage tokens and not swamp it. So I've kind of got to be really mindful of how many requests per minute, per second. So, for example, I might say, here's a PDF in Spanish, translate it to English, and summarize it for me in no more than 2 paragraphs. So I've got the technique that I use to summarize is page by page in this document. So I'll sort of grab a page, convert it to English, and then do that across all the pages. So then I've got a raft of pages, but I can't submit that all at once into OpenAI. So I've got to do it, chunk it up a bit, and sort of let's say I do it by page or by 2 paragraphs or whatever. It's actually paragraphs, but so then what I do is get OpenAI to summarize the first page. And then I take that summary with the second page and say, summarize this. So the first page summary is context. The second page is actually new content. So then as I go through the pages, what's that, sorry?
It tries to aggregate the new content with the context and then create a new context.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so I've got to be really mindful of during that process of not overloading the back end. Otherwise it just fails, call me back in 5 minutes or whatever it might be. So I'm just curious, is that something that you see come across in Logic apps? Or are you in God mode that, Wagner's here, spin up the liquid nitrogen cooled, hardware?
I think it would be similar. The difference that when you're doing that with there is 2 things here, right? On that example, we are using your own instance of the OpenAI service and the Azure search. So is your you probably would be able to scale based on that, because it's not like the public service that everyone is trying to get, and you have a number of tokens that you bought. That's one point. But the second one is, because you're using Logic apps, then you should be able to actually handle the retries and handle the concurrency, the things yourself, and that becomes part of the logic of your Logic apps, instead of you having to write a whole lot of code to do that. It comes back to that one of the things like why Logic apps can be a good thing, because in the end, it's a workflow process, right? It's just like the endpoints are intelligent endpoints, but it's basically a workflow process. It's the same problem that you have with, I have the thousands of EDI messages that needs to go to a SQL server that only be able to receive 50 at a time.
Yeah.
Can I just check?
I think that's one of the things that makes Logic apps attractive from one side.
Thanks.
Sorry, Martin.
So that ingestion API allows you to set the chunk size and the overlap. If you're, I assume under the hood you're using the OpenAI ingestion API reference endpoint, right? So when you're doing that, it does allow you to set the chunk size and the overlap, which should overcome at least some of the issues around paging. But on the note of the ingestion, I'd be interested to know how you handle the completion of that, because it takes some time, right, to do the ingestion. And
Mm-hmm.
normally, I mean, the way I do it is I have something and I just have a loop that goes, okay, well, are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet?
Yeah.
Before I can then go on and ask questions.
Yes. So when we put in that, like the ingestion, it's just because here was like a really small sample, right?
Oh, yeah.
It didn't take longer. But the whole thing is it is a offline process for ingestion. It is totally async compared to the intelligent front end.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that leads me to my second question, which is, in the front end, how do you find the behavior of the service, or how should we as developers plan for this, in the sense that it appears to me not to be a request response type service where it might take 6, 10, 15 seconds to kind of answer and come back and partially come back and things like this. So, going from, let's say, a mobile app driven world, I've put something in, and there's all sorts of other requirements around building solutions that say, 1.5 seconds is too long for a lot of services, and, this sort of stuff. So, I fully appreciate what's being done, and I think it's fantastic, but I'm wondering what that intermediary storage is that is there sort of a cache around that sort of goes, oh, well, out in the field, this is really similar to something else that someone else has asked recently, or, through an app-driven type prompts, what's near me, what's around me, where are other people that are interested in the same clubs and groups that I'm interested in, for example. And, going back to OpenAI first principles, querying that all the time. Yes, I understand it's sort of, the dynamic, etc. But in when we're not sitting there asking questions and we're trying to have it, underpin a solution that's running, what do you sort of think? Do you sort of think just take the hit and it's going to take ages, or is there like a cache type, Redis or whatnot that we can stick in between of that? So,
I'll give you my layman's answer, right? Not the expert on that area, but the two things that I can see on this is those endpoints are actually not going to be exposed directly. It's going to be exposed by some kind of API gateway, right? So like API management, something like that. That is the place where, depending on how you create your application, we see application chats today that says, I don't want it to receive natural text, right? To speed up the process, they're going to give you like a series of questions. You asking about this, you asking about that, and it is the kind of driving the process for you. Still get the information based on your context. If you're doing that, it's easier to cache because your context might be your location plus one of those items, and that allow you to provide like data if the data is not stale. When inside the context is pretty much what we see that is similar to what the assistant is doing is, I'm generating your answer, and it stays on I'm generating your answer for a little while before it gives you the message back.
Yeah.
So really depends on the type of information that you need to provide. Sometimes you'll be able to do that caching, and then there is like the layers in front of the actual engine behind the scenes that is going to allow you to do that. I don't think it would happen directly at the engine because it is going to be getting that particular context to do the search.
I guess my comment there would be that if you're looking to cache responses from questions to make sure that if people come back in and ask the same question again, you've got to be able to infer that they've asked the same question from natural language.
So it's almost like doing a context, a parse of the context to then pass that to the backend and then
Yeah.
be able to get. So almost like you're doing a two-step. One, convert natural language to standard, canonical, and then pass it to the backend to be able to get the same answer all the time.
You might not really save that much time in the response.
Exactly. But there is I saw chats today that is doing like that. What I was talking about, like, although it's still going through an intelligent endpoint in the behind the scenes, it tries to, as Martin is saying, making sure that the answers are the questions are the same or the prompts are the same, so it can actually bring it back. It's something that you can force on your application if you want to. Not everything needs to be natural language. Even if you bring back a natural language answer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, look, exciting times, that's for sure.
And I think it's like, if it's anything like what we saw in the last year and a half, we're probably going to have a different conversation in another year and a half, right? We don't know the speed of the things are happening.
Yeah.
So now
I
just
think
the
it's.
big thing.
I only had one more slide, but the slide that I had was about Logic Apps Aviators. So I can make the shout out here. If people that is watching is looking for news on Logic Apps or on the integration, but particularly in Logic Apps, try to tune in on Logic Apps Aviators. We have a newsletter every month, and we have Logic Apps Live every month as well. Find me on LinkedIn and Twitter, and you find exactly when things are going to happen.
Any other questions, guys?
Not from me.
Are we recording, Bill?
Yes, we're still recording.
Okay.
So
So
I will end
those
the
are the
recording
questions
now.
that you are allowed, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I think
Thanks,
that means-
Wagner.
I think that means Mick's got a curly question.
No.
Yeah, the curly questions is only after that live
Yeah.
signal disappears.
Just unrelated question.